Welcome to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast, Achieving Peace Through Compassion. This podcast is a recording of the Dharma Talks given during our Sunday service. This talk was given by Lama Matthew Palden Gocha.
So my talk today is Moonlight on Muddy Water, Seeing Purity Within Imperfection. So let's begin by just taking a moment to imagine. We're walking by a small pond after a storm at night. The rain's passed. The ground is soft beneath our feet, but the water is muddy, rippled by wind, twigs scattered across the surface. And yet when the moon rises, we pause even for a moment and notice its reflection. Soft, luminous, untouched by the mud below. This is how the Dharma invites us to see the purity within our own imperfections. Beneath all the murk of confusion, fear, and striving, even when thoughts and emotions churn, there's a quiet light shining through, unbroken, untainted, luminous, and whole. The Buddha called this luminous nature the Tathagata Garbha, our innate capacity for awakening. Let's explore that reflection a little bit. What it teaches us about the nature of our own minds, how that light shines through imperfection, and how we can recognize it without turning it into another fixed idea of self or purity. Because even in our most imperfect moments, a deep purity remains. I remember moments when practice felt like I was polishing a mirror that never quite shined, until I realized that really I was polishing that moonlight. Maybe you felt that way too, working so hard to feel pure, calm, or whole, only to discover that what you sought was already shining within you. So how can we trust, though, that this light of awakening remains, even when we feel lost, angry, or unworthy? We live in a culture obsessed with self-improvement, spiritually, emotionally, physically. We're taught to believe that something in us is fundamentally wrong, that we must polish, perform, and improve. And many of us come to Buddhism hoping to fix ourselves, to polish, correct, or even improve what we think is broken. But the Buddhist path isn't about becoming something better. It's about realizing that what we seek has never been missing. We're not polishing the moon. We're simply letting the clouds drift away. In the Mahāyāna tradition, this recognition is expressed through the teachings of the Tathagata Garbha, or Buddha nature, the innate purity and potential within all beings. This recognition, the light that is always present, is expressed again and again throughout the Mahāyāna. And one of the most luminous voices describing it is Queen Srimala. In the sutra on the lion's roar of Queen Srimala, she describes Buddha nature as not something to grasp, but as something to trust. And Queen Srimala, a devoted laywoman and great bodhisattva, represents the union of faith and wisdom. Her lion roar is not a declaration or doctrine. It's the roar of confidence that comes from direct experience. She proclaims that the very ground of the Four Noble Truths cannot be reached by logic or intellect. It must be known by wisdom itself. So let's hear her words. And I quote, "The Noble Truths have a most profound meaning, subtle, difficult to know. Not of the cognitive or finite realms. What is known by those who have this wisdom is inconceivable to the world, because this profound meaning reveals the most profound Tathagata Garbha, the realm of the Tathagata, unseen by disciples and Pratika Buddhas." End quote. This passage reminds us, awakening cannot be understood by logic. It's not the property of intellect, but of direct realization. It takes what Queen Srimala calls a wise mind, not wise through study, but wise through trust. The sutra says the very foundations of the Four Noble Truths is this luminous mind, the awareness that knows suffering and releases from within. And this is striking. We often hear about these Four Noble Truths as teachings about experience, but Srimala reveals something deeper. The light of awareness that perceives suffering is already the Dharmakaya, already the Buddha seeing through us. What would it mean if your Buddha nature was not something to earn, but something to uncover? Queen Shamala in her sutra describes two ways of understanding the Noble Truths, the conditioned and the unconditioned. The conditioned view is bound by intellect, seeing the path as something to build, something to build, suffering as something to escape. The unconditioned view is wisdom itself, the knowing that liberation is already present, already whole. The conditioned is the path we walk. The unconditioned is what's always beneath our feet. When we rely on logic and reasoning, we build a path of constructs. But when we rest in awareness itself, we uncover what was never created. Nirvana is not attained, it's revealed. The reflection remains. In the Vajrayana, the Mahamudra traditions, the same realization is brought even closer, not as an abstraction, but as direct pointing to the nature of the mind. Khenchen Thrangu Rinpoche says, the true nature of the mind is sometimes called Mahamudra, sometimes Dzogchen. Mahasiddhas have explained it in a way that is easier to understand. The nature of mind is the natural or ordinary mind, which is completely uncontrived and always has been. This ordinary mind is very close, always present and empty by nature, but also has luminosity. End quote. This is the union of emptiness and clarity, the luminous knowing that perceives even confusion without being caught by it. When we look directly at our mind without contrivance or expectation, we discover it's not something we need to make pure. It's already pure, open, awake, and present. This is what the Mahamudra masters call ordinary mind, not dull or average, but a mind free of manipulation, completely natural. The more we try to improve it, the further we drift from it. The moment we relax, it's right here, seeing, hearing, feeling, knowing itself. Empty, luminous, uncontrived. And this too is what Queen Shamala meant, that awakening isn't something to reach, but something to recognize. The light shines through the mud. Yongey Kacha Rinpoche says, the Buddha used words, examples, and signs as vehicles to actualize Buddha nature. The actuality cannot be expressed. When we engage in meditation based on these signs, we too can experience the Tathagata Garbha. End quote. So when the teachings say Buddha nature is wrapped in defilements, they're not describing something dirty to be scrubbed clean. They're pointing to a paradox, that the awakened body of truth, the Dharmakaya, shines through every moment, even confusion itself. The same awareness that experiences confusion is inseparable from awakening itself. We don't have to drive confusion away, we only have to see it clearly. The light doesn't wait for the mud to clear, it shines through it. Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche reminds us to be careful. If we misunderstand Buddha nature, we risk turning it into a subtle self, a kind of eternal soul. And he says, and I quote, if you want to know about Buddha nature, study Maitreya's Uttara Tantra Shastra. Be careful, or it might become like an Atman, a truly existing soul. The result of elimination isn't something that comes afterwards. The result is always there. The window continues from before the dirt was there, while the dirt is being washed away, and after the cleaning is complete, the window has always been free from the concepts of dirt and freedom from dirt. End quote. So just as a window doesn't become pure after being cleaned, Buddha nature doesn't emerge through purification. It was never tainted to begin with. The mud, the clouds, the dirt, they are temporary. They never touch what's always free. The moon still shines through the mud. So let's come back to this image, moonlight on muddy water. The reflection isn't a promise of future perfections. It's the radiance that was never absent. Practice isn't about creating purity. It's about trusting what has always been pure. The moon never leaves the sky, even when the clouds obscure it. The reflection never leaves the water, even when stirred by mud. The mud is our anger, our fear, our craving, our doubt. But these moments never touch the purity of awareness itself. Whether our impurities arise from emotion or from thought, they are transient waves on the surface. They never reach the fundamental nature of our mind. Think of a moment when you felt broken or unworthy. What if, even then, your Buddha nature was radiant beneath it all, not diminished, only unseen? This is the heart of the teachings. Even wrapped in defilement, Buddha nature is not stained. The moon's reflection remains whole, even in a puddle. Our awakening is never far, it has only been hidden. The light shines still through the mud. And there's 3 ways we can live this truth. The first is recognition, seeing the light within. Meditation invites us to rest in the knowing itself, to notice the awareness that perceives every thought and emotion. That awareness is unstained. Even flinting glimpses of stillness are Buddha nature recognizing itself. The second is through reverence, seeing the light in others. When we recognize Buddha nature in ourselves, we begin to see it in other people. Even if those caught in anger or ignorance, compassion flows naturally. Everyone we meet is that same luminous window, clouded maybe, but not broken. And the third is resting, letting the water settle. True practice isn't scrubbing the pond, it's letting the mud settle naturally. Our effort is simply to stop stirring the pond. When we rest, the mud settles and the reflections appear on its own. Dzongtsar Khyentse Rinpoche calls this the big elimination. Not the elimination of something, but the realization that there was never anything to eliminate. When we see ourselves this way, practice becomes an act of trust. Trust in our own inherent wakefulness. The end of suffering isn't manufactured. It's the unveiling of what has always been free. The light shines through the mud. We all have muddy days, days of shame, anger, fatigue, or failure. And this teaching reminds us, don't identify with the mud. Remember the moon. Each act of mindfulness, kindness, forgiveness clears the surface a little more. When irritation arises, ask gently, what is the awareness that knows this irritation? That awareness is the moon, calm, clear, ever present. When you see another's faults, remember, this person too has Buddha nature shining beneath their confusion. And in time, this shift transforms everything. Every muddy puddle becomes a mirror. So now, if you wish, I ask that to invite you in to close your eyes and imagine a pool of water after a rain, the moon above, clouds drifting, beneath the movement, a quiet clarity, and allow the water to rest. Notice the reflections appearing, soft, still, luminous. This is your own Buddha nature, the light that never leaves. Even when the mud is clouded, the moon of awakening still shines. Do not fear the mud, for it's the womb of the lotus. And the lotus, like the moon, has always been there, waiting to bloom on its own time. So Queen Shrimala taught us to see this truth. Requires faith beyond intellect. Faith that even when the samsara's turbulence, the Dharmakaya of the Buddha is already here. So may we learn to see the moon in every muddy moment, in ourselves and in one another. And may that seeing bring forth the compassion and wisdom that we are shining there all along. And the light shines through the mud. So I hope that this talk has been beneficial to you. And this week, may you have compassion, wisdom, gratefulness, and joy.
Thank you for listening to the Rime Buddhist Center's Dharma Talk podcast. Music was provided by Barefoot Bran Music. Please consider supporting the Rime Buddhist Center by making a donation at our website at www.rimecenter.org/donate.